Hello, worthless humans. This is Skeletor. You are listening to This Week in Geek with Mike the Birdman Dodd on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'll get you, Birdman.
Prepare for liftoff. 10,
9, 7,
5, 4,
3,
2,
1.
blast off!
Doctor's banner, melted by gamma rays.
Brainiac, what is it?
Look, I just want some pants. A decent pair of pants.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
It's morphin' time!
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
My spider senses are starting to tingle.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
It's clobbering time.
Oh my god, we survived the apocalypse. Hello everybody, it's me, JT from Saskatoon, back behind the drawing board of the Sunday Funnies here at TWIG. And with me, as always, is the Alfred Pennyworth to my Edwin Jarvis, Mike the Birdman Dodd. Birdman, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Yes, I do indeed survive in this corporeal form. And wow, what a year this month has been already. It's like 2020 New Game Plus.
Oh, it's like,
but we are still here.
And that dash of like, was it 2016 or is it 2016 where like everybody was dying.
Yeah, and now we have insurrections, a stock market that's being infected by fucking memes,
GameStop,
and we've got just ridiculousness all over the planet. So what's going to happen next? God, I don't know. It's ridiculous, but hopefully we are here to entertain, inform, and hopefully bring you a couple of laughs along the way. So what are we going to be talking about in this edition of the TWIG Sunday Funnies, JT?
Well, we're going to take a look back at the year that was, the cluster fudge dumpster fire. That was the year of our Lord 2020. Kind of look at how COVID,
Hadouken!
like that was like a Mike Tyson haymaker punch to the comics industry. COVID was, kind of look back at our first year and what we talked about, kind of some stuff that's going to come up this year in the show and in comics in general. Dear Lord, I honestly thought comics were circling the drain last year once COVID hit. I mean, everyone was closing. There was no end. And yet I'm sure you saw this in news, Mike. There was no end of these knife to the heart stories of brick and mortar comic book stores having to shutter, move to another location, just in the very faint hope of maintaining any sort of financial medium, because we can't leave the house. We can't touch anything.
Well, yeah, like sure, there's an option for like curbside pickup. A part of the fun and kind of the appeal of going to a comic book store is being able to browse the different long boxes or browse what's on the rack this week to say, hey, this looks kind of neat. This cover looks cool. And you want to see what's out there. Maybe you're going into their kind of back issue bins and, hey, I got a few bucks. Let's grab something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I got a friend of mine who runs a comic book store close to me. And he surprisingly weathered COVID okay, thanks to the Canadian relief packages that were kind of handed out. So the Canadian government definitely gets a big thumbs up there because he was able to keep his store afloat. He's doing curbside pickup right now. And as far as I know, he's doing okay. I haven't talked to him in a while. I should probably give him a call at some point.
Holy crap, you're still alive.
Yeah, I know. Like, hey, dude, the virus didn't get you that I'm aware of.
Well, yeah, I'm friends with Quentin. I'm just going to give his first name. I don't know it's okay to give last names without their approval. But Quentin is the gentleman that runs 8th Street Books and Comics now here in Saskatoon. I've been going to that store for it's going to be 20 years this fall, like when I first moved to Saskatoon just a couple of months prior to that great event that happened in September that year. And I've been going there, like I said, for 20 years, and he was shut down for a month, and then, you had to call ahead, either you're getting your file or you're saying, look, I want this issue, and this issue of whatever current title there was, or, hey, do you have this Transformer? Do you have this Ninja Turtle? Because next time I go to the store, Mike, I'm going to take pictures of the toy wall and send it to you just so I can hear you scream profanities from all the way over there. Because
Nice.
you'll be jealous. And he went from phone service to meeting you at the door, and now the store's open again, mask on, sanitize going in, sanitize going out. I haven't been to Amazing Stories, which is the other comic store we have here in town, although I'm told they weathered pretty much the same, like they were shut down for a while. They're more of a gaming and collectibles store at this point. Like, there's so much more there than comics. I mean, there's more than just comics at Quentin's store too. It's just, that's the one I go to. And when you talk about comics, like, nothing came out for like a month. Like, there was nothing available, even digitally. And the first sign of life in the industry that I saw after that was from DC Comics. Before they got the ball rolling again, they put out a series of digital comics, and it's not like when they put out digitals, it's the long view, like landscape. If you're using your tablet, these are, you're holding it up straight. It looks like a comic in your hand. They could fit into the general continuity of like the Aquaman. There's an Aquaman, a Flash, a Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. They can fit into the normal continuity, like I said, just they're putting this out there. And there's some really good stuff in there too. Like the Batman one was just titled Batman Gotham Knights. And it was intended just to be a one-shot, but they had this huge, like, everyone lost their shit and loved it. Not just because it's a fresh comic, but it's a fresh Batman comic drawn by Jim Lee. And he hasn't drawn a Batman comic in years. And then Marvel started putting stuff out, and they had, both companies had so much planned. There's an actual list. You can find it online at like bleedingcool.com, a couple other sites, of Marvel MIA titles. Like, there were so many titles that were supposed to come out and should have been in like their almost at their year, like 12 issues now, that haven't even seen the first issue come out because of how COVID screwed the pooch.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like, are you up on what's kind of going on in the X-Men comics right now?
No, like it's weird. I pretty much only follow, this is going to out me as the outlier here. I only really follow the Boom Studios stuff. I've been dipping my toe into some IDW kind of crossover stuff, but it's weird. Like, I'm only really getting in the stuff thanks to you. So thanks to the wonderfulness of digital access, thanks to Mike Blanchard being able to loan me his account for Comixology, I'm able to read a couple things. 2020 was a year where I experimented in a lot of different kind of comics to try and see what's out there, or to like stuff I've always wanted to read but never had the opportunity to. Mm-hmm. Because as we mentioned, it's lockdown, it's COVID, you're not going outside, you're not going anywhere. What else are you going to do? And I read more comics this year than I probably have in at least the last 5, 6, probably even longer than that.
Yeah, no, it's by that benchmark, I haven't slowed down at all. It's like, wow, JT from Saskatoon's reading comics to kill time. What a shock. But yeah, no, it's some like you're experimenting, you're dipping your toes into other things, like the crossovers, like the first couple issues of the Transformers Back to the Future. There is a crossover I never saw coming. I mean, yeah. I can hear a slightly digitized version of the great Christopher Lloyd's voice coming out of the transforming DeLorean known as Gigawatt. And if that's the thing they ever made like an animated, like a direct to DVD animated film, by God, Hollywood will be burnt to the ground if you don't get Doc Brown to voice the robotic Doc Brown.
I mean, honestly, if they did want to do like a kind of Netflix special, I'd be okay with that. I mean, as long as they're bringing back the original actors to voice their roles, because I'm pretty sure Michael J. Fox will probably never step in front of the camera again, but he could do voice roles. And there was the kid who did the Marty McFly voice from the Back to the Future game, and he sounds really close.
Oh yeah, yeah. But like you're saying, like Marvel, especially, like their stuff been canceled from DC, but they've kind of recouped that more so now. But I mean, Marvel at this point, we should have been 8 issues deep into this new X-Men title called Children of the Atom, which is essentially currently in the X-Men comics. So this is something for Mike, and this is also something for you folks. The Jonathan Hickman, who's this guy who plays the long game. Like he had this great run on FF and totally reinvented the Fantastic Four. He took over Avengers for like 3 or 4 years leading up to 2015 Secret Wars, which almost rebooted the Marvel Universe DC style, but kind of didn't. And that's a whole episode in and of itself. But when he rebooted the X-Men, all of a sudden mutants are every mutant on Earth, and those that haven't moved there already, are all living on the island of Krakoa, which is this living island in the Marvel Universe. Like imagine Swamp Thing, but he's half the size of Australia.
Okay.
And on this island, like there's a whole thing about whether or not they're all there of their free will, and when mutants die, they're resurrected. It's a whole thing. But Children of the Atom was one I was looking forward to, because it's going to be these new mutants on the island who are proteges, like think Young Justice, but Marvel. Like you have there's this new one who looks like a new version of Archangel. There's a Cyclops-like mutant. There's a black female Gambit, some Nightcrawler-looking mofo. And I was looking forward to this because this looked like fun, getting back to the Wolverine and the X-Men title from a few years ago. And when COVID hit, that threw every publisher's schedule into disarray. I mean, to the point that DC, once they started getting their stuff going again, they left Diamond Distributors. They're their own, either they're distributing their own comics, or I forget if they're using somebody else now. Like there's these huge seismic changes. And there are these comics that haven't come out. Like we were supposed to get this new Warriors comic. Oh, buckle in for this one, Mike, where there's a new character in here. All these new characters, I have never been one. Like I feel such an old man when I say this. They're snowflakes. Like one of the characters is literally called Snowflake. Her brother or sister, because one of them is supposed to be cisgender neutral, and I'm not against that. But then you got them. You have this guy who's called Screen Time, who got his powers from his grandfather's internet gas.
Oh, I think I remember this, and a lot of people were really up in arms over it.
Yeah, like yeah. I don't. Again, I'm a fuddy-duddy old man now, and these are reflective of kids today. I mean, you have one kid, a B negative, who, in addition to, because of how everyone seems to be negative on the internet, this character is a vampire who was somehow infected with the blood of Morbius, the living vampire, when they were young. There was a trailblazer who's this plus size girl who's either Native American or Latina, and no one can seem to find out confirmation either way. But a lot of people are calling her Marvel's Dora the Explorer, because she's got this backpack that just like feeds her snacks or weird items that she may or may not need in the moment. Again, one of the brother-sister characters is this guy character named Safe Space, who creates the force shields to protect everybody, but he can't use it on himself. And just because of all the whole cancel culture and safe spaces, and you're not allowed to say that word because I find it offensive, it just feels like they're forcing change.
I wouldn't even go so far as to say that, because I'm all for creating interesting and diverse characters from a variety of different backgrounds. But the problem is the stories need to be interesting first and foremost. And I think naming a character Safe Space is maybe a little too on the nose, whereas like that's not even a cool idea. It just comes across as parody and caricature at that point.
And I think that's what's buggy. It's not that I'm against these characters, like they're set up like this. It's just they created the characters first. We have no idea what the story was even going to be because everybody lost their shit. Marvel just put this into limbo because Lord knows if this has ever come out. It's like, I was like, it's a new take on the New Warriors. That's a comic that I read when I was a kid. I loved it. I was like, I'll give it a try. I've tried every New Warriors title that's come out to varying degrees of effectiveness. It's like they were capitulating before they were told or being made to capitulate. You know, they're forcing all this change, but it just seems like really short-sighted and reactionary.
I mean, a character and a story arc should be, you should have an idea, and you should create a character in a certain space. You should know what that character's arc is going to be, the story you want to tell. You don't create a character using bullet points of, I want to hit this, that, and the other thing because it's hot and popular right now. You're selling it to marketing. And yes, a comic needs to sell, and yes, you should be marketing to new demographics to bring in new kind of readers. That's absolutely the point of business, but your story should be compelling and interesting first and foremost. Don't just create by committee. So I mean, it sucks. I mean, I like the New Warriors too. I remember reading about Night Thrasher and Speedball and all those people and how that ended up into Civil War back in the day when they blew up a town by accident. Stuff like that. So
and then Speedball became a cutter.
Yeah, like that's okay, Marvel, sure.
They looked at the internet and it's like, the kids are doing this now, right? Sure.
Yeah, like I guess that's hip. I mean, maybe a little tone deaf, but you know, obviously give me something interesting. Like one of the things I've wanted to check out this year and I haven't got around to, there are certain comics that I actually went to my local library and was surprised to find there. Now they're older comics because I want to explore more interesting stories because I'm getting into writing right now. In fact, as of this recording, I just got accepted to a college program locally for creative writing. It takes 3 years. I can reasonably finish in like a year if I gun it. And I want to see more romance, a little less kind of superhero stuff, or more interesting personal stories, which is why this year when we talked about the Sandman stuff, I got really into that. I really started to dig that. Another one was, I can't remember who the artist and the writer was, but I remember the name. And the comic was called Strangers in Paradise. And I remember that being in Wizard magazine all the time in the 90s.
Terry Moore, I think. I remember that in Wizard all the time too, yeah.
Yeah, and it once again caught my attention. And there's a book, I'm going to see if I can find like a trade paperback, just because the title has me interested, and it's called Lumberjanes.
So dude, that is so good. Like, it's for those that don't know, folks, Lumberjanes is this wonderful, and I can't stress that word enough, wonderful comic from Boom Studios about, like, you know how the original Ben 10 series was Ben and his grandpa and his cousin going on like the summer vacation never ends, because I mean they stretched that out for like 4 years. That's presumably the whole title, is them having all these weird like Gravity Falls-esque, you know, quasi mystical adventures at this girls' summer camp. And you have like a couple of the girls fall in love with each other over the summer. There's this one girl, Riley, who is the quintessential hyperactive kid who is my spirit animal, you know, doing all the stuff I wish I was brave enough and energetic enough to do when I was a kid. So I sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there. Just
Oh no, like
you know.
it's stuff like that. I mean, one of the things I've kind of saw this year is 2020 was a year of experimentation for me. Because you're the person who got me into Valiant comics, and I love Armstrong and Archer, and I've still got a lot of that to read. One of the comics you got me into this year was Bloodshot, which I've read the first 4 issues so far. I know there's like 8 of them or more. Really
up to 10 right now. Yeah, and I'm not. It's not a spoiler, but there are 2 characters that show up in the most recent issue, which I'll double check later. I'm pretty sure you have it. That okay, why did I not see these 2 joining the universe sooner? It's great though, because
I mean, like Bloodshot came to me this year because of the Vin Diesel movie, and the Vin Diesel movie, I think, it's your 90s, early 2000s era superhero style movie where it's more style over substance. Like, this is not the MCU by any stretch.
No.
But
it's
it introduces
supposed to start of Valiant verse movies.
It won't, which is kind of tragic, because if you told me Archer and Armstrong, for example, if you turned that into a half-hour or hour-long adventure series, I would be all over that. That would be a fantastically cool show. Yeah. And you don't have to put a lot of special effects into it either.
Oh, no. Archer and Armstrong would be great in a Xena Hercules sort of setup.
Exactly. It would be friggin' fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, I liked Bloodshot. I enjoy Bloodshot on the same level that I enjoyed the Whedon cut of Justice League. You know, it's fun, and it's, granted, Justice League is a lot closer to the comics than the Vin Diesel movie is, but there is a lot of fun. Like, you had some characters, situations, like that scene where he attacks the convoy in the tunnel and he walks up to the window and he draws a little smiley face. Like, dude, man, you're just fucking with those people now, aren't you?
I mean, you know? There's something to be said to being able to introduce a new cinematic idea like Bloodshot in the era where we have DC being a powerhouse. Marvel's obviously got its 23 film franchise at this point, plus multiple television series. Obviously DC has all their TV stuff. To even attempt that in 2020 is a bold move. It obviously, in my opinion, didn't succeed. I hope that doesn't scare people off of trying other things, because there's another comic, I think it's Valiant 2, and I've only ever seen the cover to it, but it's this plus-size superhero girl.
Faith.
And I think her name, Faith. Yeah, that looks interesting to me.
Oh, God.
And I'm thinking, all right, I'll check that out.
No, Faith came out of like the original wave of, she was a character in Harbinger, which was one of the original 4 titles when Valiant rebooted in 2012. And she's this lifelong nerd. You know, or she was orphaned at a young age, grew up with her grandmother looking after her, and she had her parents were nerds, and they were like exposing her to like comics and Star Trek and role-playing games, and she is the audience. A lot of ugly shit happened. Eventually they spun her off, where she split up with the rest of the Harbinger renegades, and she went to LA to be, you know, ply her trade as a superhero, and she gives herself a secret identity and works at like a clickbaity BuzzFeed type of website, writing listicles, and almost every Faith comic it has nothing to do with the greater, more intense, darker goings on of the Valiant universe. It's just this bright little ray of sunshine.
Another thing that I did this summer was, thanks to you, I was able to read Gen 13 for the first time. And I also saw the movie for the first time, which is buried, but somebody has uploaded it to YouTube, because you can buy it everywhere else around the world, but it's out of print and you can't buy it in North America for whatever reason. And it's got John Delancey as, help me out with this, as Lynch. It's got a bunch of really I know Mark Hamill plays a guy.
Yeah, he
I
plays.
can't think of his name.
Threshold, I think. He's that dude with like the weird blonde hair. Alicia Witt is Fairchild. Flea, the drummer from Red Hot Chili Peppers, is my boy Grunge. Everybody's crush in the 90s, I don't care who you are, and you say you're not crushing on her, you're a filthy liar. Lori Petty, Tank Girl, is Roxy Freefall.
Mm-hmm. And like that movie, I wish people had seen. Is it the height of animation? No. Is it faithful to the comic? Kinda. It's entertaining. It was enough to get me to want to read the comics after 25 years. Yeah. And that says something to me. And like I said, I never want to be stagnant in what I'm being exposed to. Another thing that COVID kind of stopped me in my tracks with is some of my Boom Studios Power Ranger comics were delayed multiple months. They were in the middle of doing the Power Rangers Ninja Turtle stuff, and that got pushed off for months.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that got pushed off, like Marvel, DC not so much. Marvel is the only one that has, like I said, this running a list of MIA titles that they're still trying to figure out, because the way publishing schedules are set up and builds in, or the way they're building up certain storylines, just like I said, COVID just threw everything into a blender and hit frappe. You know, but speaking about that, Mike, like I did something I told Mike off the air. I'm going to put 3 pictures into the chat here, Mike.
Okay, now, I'm going to put on my glasses.
Yes, please. And the first one, okay, so Marvel was setting up this crossover called Empire. It was built around some older Marvel characters called Kotati or Kotatli. They're these plant-based aliens, and they have the Messiah of the Kree and the Skrull races, this character named Hulkling, who's part of the Young Avengers, and he's become the empire of both space empires. And it was going to be this huge mega crossover. Now, this first picture I put in here, this is the original reading order. There's about 55 different comics, between 2 or 3 regular ongoing comics that are in here, a whole crap ton of one-shots and miniseries, and this was going to be the entire story. Now, the second one I'm putting in here, this is a slightly...
Let me tell you, looking at that reading list, that turns me off of it immediately.
Oh, God. No, ever since, I'm going to say Civil War, I have... my natural inclination to read everything involved with a storyline is constantly at war with my wallet and my desire to not waste my time.
I remember, and this is once again going to date me as, man, you're old as shit, is back in the 90s when you had stuff like the Executioner song, when you had stuff like the Clone Saga or Onslaught. And you might pick up, Spider-Man number 23 has an Onslaught crossover. It's like a panel. Who gives a shit? And that's what's turned me off of crossovers for the most part. Now, if it's a self-contained crossover or something that only does a couple of titles, like I remember with IDW, they did Ghostbusters and Transformers and something else, and it was called Infestation. And that involved zombies or ghosts or something. I'm like, all right, that's not so bad. It's only 4 titles. Don't care. Cool. The series will wrap up in 6 months. That's fine with me. But looking at that list, get bent.
Okay.
Who's got that kind of time?
Well, apparently Marvel executives think we all have that kind of money. Now, the second one is the first time they revised it, released it just as Marvel was getting shit rolling again. Now there's only 40 plus titles.
Oh my God. No, look at the list for June. Get fucked. Like, I'm sorry to get so, energetic about this, but no, how the hell? Okay, so let's say each book costs about $5.
Mm-hmm.
No, that is like groceries for some people. That is like your phone bill. In June alone, you are spending like your phone bill.
Yeah.
No.
Now this third one, it is the last one. This is actually everything on this list came out. for the most part, and I've done the research, as I've mentioned on the show before, folks, one of my passions, some that I really got into hardcore this last year with COVID and everything, is figuring out reading orders. And like I said just a couple minutes ago, figuring out how not to waste my time. Now, most of the comics on this thing for Empire, now, it's still a fair amount of titles. I will grant you that. You can pretty much skip the Captain Marvel stuff. I do like, don't love, but I do like Carol Danvers as a character. But her stuff doesn't really affect the ongoing plot of Empire. So you can chuck those. The X-Men, that's everything else is important. The Immortal She-Hulk one-shot, that's something that takes place after it, so you don't even have to bother reading that unless you're a really big Hulk fan. But you look back at, for the first one, you lost about 15 comics. Then the second one, you lost another, like about half that to bring it down to that final one. Like there's Empire Storm Ranger, Empire the Invasion of Wakanda, the Empire Savage Avengers. All these things were cut hard. There was this one title called The Union, which is based around this British team of heroes involving like Union Jack and this new character called Britannia, who's like kind of this Wonder Woman-esque character. And all this stuff was kind of like, there was a Thor tie-in miniseries, and Immortal Hulk, which is different from the Immortal She-Hulk one. Like, so much stuff was cut because it's like Marvel seemingly went and looked at like, look, we got to get this out because this is, tying into like a huge part of Avengers history and the Fantastic Four getting involved, such like that. And, Marvel, even that last one, they expect us to buy all those comics if you want to make it. I think that's a little more doable than those first two. Cause like you said, get fucked, get bent, good day, sir. I said good day. Cause you talk like Civil War.
It's not sustainable.
No, it's not. And there's a lot of stuff from Marvel, like I said, that's been cut. Like they had, there was the the most recent Infinity Saga crossover from a couple of years ago, which reinvented the Infinity Gems as the Infinity Stones, like trying to shift them so to be a little more like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They had this new crossover, which was going to take place in a series of just in like 7 or 8 Marvel annuals. Kind of like how DC and Marvel used to have themed annuals back in the 90s. And that's somewhere out in limbo, like that they may or may not ever, like probably won't be done this year. We might not see them till next year, like 2022. There was a Gwen Stacy miniseries that I was reading that I was really enjoying because it was in the early days of Peter Parker being Spider-Man, but Spider-Man is only seen in like a few panels, and it's about Gwen Stacy and her best friends Flash Thompson and Harry Osborn, and they're trying to figure out a mystery. Like it had this slight Scooby-Doo aesthetic to it. Again, there was the New Warriors that may never see the light of day. There was a mini series based on Nebula as they were shifting her more to the Karen Gillan version that we saw in the movies. That's never going to see the light of day. Hell, there was even a Punisher miniseries supposed to come out, starring this character named Barracuda, who's like this big black dude who is basically, he's like the Russian from the Tom Jane movie, but he has personality, and he's actually got half a chance of taking the Punisher. We may never see some of these comics because of how badly COVID fucked up comics.
That's something else to kind of mention, to get a little political for a moment. Characters like the Punisher, because you obviously have certain political elements taking the Punisher logo as their own, and in the wake of Black Lives Matter, you look at characters like the Punisher. Are they necessary anymore? And I know the creator of the Punisher has said, could you guys like not take what I created and like co-opt it for your terrible manners and everything? Yeah, because
I think it was in the last Punisher volume, and I think it came out like 2019, which involved the Punisher being given the War Machine armor by the new Black Nick Fury, going after Kingpin, who's now mayor of NYC. And it ends with like everyone thinking the Punisher got blown off the top of the Empire State Building and now he's dead. No one knows where he is. And there was an issue where the cops were like, yeah, man, we're on the same side. It was like that. And the Punisher literally gets up in this dude's grill and says, no, you took an oath. And he tells them, what I do, I made a choice. I can never take that back. I ever see you operate even remotely operating like me, I will take you out. Like, and that's Marvel, like taking that stance. Like the Punisher is, again, great as a character, but you gotta come at him from the aspect that he was originally created out of the, the Executioner, Mac Bolan, Stony Man, the Destroyer, like these pulp novels. That's huge rebirth of the pulp novel in the 1970s when Punisher first came out. He was very much inspired by that. And I mean, for years he was there. He had those 2 issues of Spider-Man, and it was probably like 7 or 8 years before like the first 4-issue Punisher Marvel miniseries came out. And he was always this guy, was this kill crazy vigilante. But through the 80s and into the 90s, I mean, at one point the Punisher had like 4 different ongoing titles.
Yeah, like I remember Punisher War Journal, Punisher Warzone. One of my most memorable comics was there's this Punisher comic that had like a cardboard cover and it was all full of like bullet holes and everything. Like, and that's the Punisher as a character now. Can you do it? Sure. Should you do it? Probably not, but in the right writer's hands, you might be able to craft something out of it. But I think given the current political climate right now, maybe the character should be backed off for a while.
Yeah.
If Frank Castle wants to do something else, maybe he could do that. Like I said, he's got the War Machine armor.
Well,
so
he doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
But no, and the thing is, for a very, like, I want to say at least 6 or 7 years, the Punisher technically was still in the Marvel Universe, but the titles being published, almost said punished, the Punisher title that was being published was set in an alternate universe in the Marvel Max line where it was, the Punisher was like, 50, 60 some years old. He was still in Vietnam. It wasn't the Marvel sliding timeline where now he's in the Southeast Asia conflict, dark and gritty, and the Punisher doing what the Punisher does. And you could read those comics and didn't have to worry about the kids reading them because they literally would not sell them to anybody that was under the age of 19. But yeah, like the Punisher, as much as I've enjoyed those stories over the years, you have to take that step back. And I mean, there's the idea of like, what would you do to avenge your family? Like how they did it with the John Bernthal 2 seasons of Punisher and Daredevil season 2. That was great, but they came at it from a different angle, that he wasn't just this crazy man. Like, he's dealing with PTSD. He's dealing with this trauma, and it's not something they ever really did in the comics.
Yeah. They gave the character depth other than I have an M60, you die now.
Yeah.
So can the character continue? Sure. Are you going to have to rework him? Oh yeah. And it's not cool to use the logo how most people are thinking to use the logo, so please stop.
Yeah. The cops and soldiers wearing it, it's just like, that's party foul, bro.
Yeah, like, just please don't be an asshole. And I'm trying to think of what else happened this year in terms of comics that really kind of got me going. I mean, like I said, experimentation was the spice of life this year. I finally read the DC's New 52 after being out for like a million years, and then you tell me that it's over. I'm thinking, well, that sucks. I was really liking this. But yeah, that's my thing. I'm always behind the curve on comics. The only thing I've even stayed remotely current with is Power Rangers, and even that I'm behind by like 3 months reading stuff just because I've been so busy with Twig and all my other work, but I keep buying the issues whenever they come out. Another thing that I tried this year, because it was too weird not to, was My Little Pony Transformers. Wow, that's a trip. Yeah, that's weird. Seeing the Insecticons at the Happy Acres or whatever it is. That's interesting. And Rarity and RC team up. And yeah, that's a thing.
Oh, you can't see it, but I'm making the monkey doing a math problem face right now.
It's so weird that IDW and Boom Studios and all these comic companies can survive on doing all these weird crossovers. Like, I know Dynamite Comics is doing something right now. I think it's called Dynamite, and it spells it like die as in like you're gonna die, and that involves like zombies and shit or something. So yeah, that's interesting. I think
DC actually did something like that this last year called Deceased.
I was curious about that. What is the elevator pitch for that?
Darkseid turns the anti-life equation into a computer virus, infects Cyborg, and he infects the world.
Okay, so is it like DC Marvel Zombies?
Basically, like if you infects electronics devices and if you see it, like red light flashes on your face and you're instantly infected and you turn into like, they're more like 28 days later kind of like rage zombies, and okay. It's not like you get scratched and you have like a few minutes before. No, it's like you get scratched, you turn like that moment. Okay,
that's pretty weird. Is it like a Elseworlds story or?
Yeah, no, it's very much an Elseworlds story. Thank God. If they had started doing that in the main, let's just for DC 616 to give it a title, they did that in the main one and then COVID happened, dear Lord, DC would be hooped. Because you bring it back around to DC now. A big thing, it kind of I think it was 2019, the series Doomsday Clock, which was finally supposed to explain exactly what sort of shenanigans happened. And this is like explain why stuff was so different from Flashpoint going forward. And you find out that Dr. Manhattan from the Watchmen had crossed over to the DC universe and futzed with the timeline. So he did away with the ideas of legacy and hope that had always very much been a part of DC Comics. And that's why we had the New 52, and it was reading like Image comics from the 90s, but with DC characters. And then there was weird flubs like stuff like Batman's back being broken by Bane and Superman dying, and all these huge events like the crises have all happened in this world, but they're just kind of out there in left field, and if they see you, they'll wave at you, sort of like little Vaseline on the lens. And they course corrected that and reinstated hope and legacy to the DC universe, brought Wally West back fully into the timeline, and then he got written out because he had PTSD and he killed a bunch of heroes at this superhero mental health clinic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And this was very much being directed by Dan DiDio and Jeff Johns. Now, I got to take a moment here and I'm offering my apology to Dan DiDio. I have talked incredible amounts of shit about this man since the New 52 began. I very unjustly blamed him in my ignorance. It wasn't all his fault. When you see him in interviews and the stuff he's worked on, like, he is a fan done good. Like, one of his favorite comic books in DC was The Metal Men, like Dr. Will Magnus, and he's got these, androids that, they're all made out of very specific metal, and their personalities are reflective of qualities that we associate with those metals. And he's just a huge nerd that's done good. Has everything he's done been great? No, but it was very rude of me to blame him, like I said, in my ignorance for that. So I apologize to Dan DiDio for all the bullshit that I've talked about him. Now, one of the things that he was in charge of before he got let go, fired, I'm still not entirely certain what happened, was they were going out of Doomsday Clock and they're building towards 5G or the 5th generation. And this was kind of like a Crisis on Infinite Earths moment, but this was something that they said was going to totally change the landscape until the next time DC decides to, wreck shop again. And they were going to age up characters finally. Like they have Jonathan Kent, like Superman's and Lois's son. Superman was going to grow a bit older. He was going to retire and Jonathan was going to take over. There was going to be a new guy under the cape and cowl protecting Gotham City. There's going to be this new woman from South America. She was going to be the new Wonder Woman. And then COVID happened and, like I said, wrecked the landscape. Dan DiDio lost his job at DC. And now it's something I'm looking forward to. It started a couple weeks ago, and it's this new 2-month event called Future State, where all of the regular DC titles are being put on hold. And a lot of the story ideas from 5th generation are being reworked into one issue, like one shots and a series of 3-issue miniseries, and it taking place, 5 minutes into the future, a year into the future, a decade into the future with various characters. So we have like an idea spinning out of the Batman comics where, in the wake of George Floyd and defunding the police, Batman's been defunded in DC Comics right now. The Joker got a hold of all like the billions of dollars that Bruce Wayne uses to buy all those wonderful toys, wrecked Gotham City for like the umpteenth time. And now you got this guy who was a cop during the riots, lost an eye. He's become mayor. He's operating on a platform of no more masks in Gotham. And the guy running in lockstep behind him, James Gordon.
Interesting.
In the issues following that, they've also, this is what gets me excited about DC in the future, Lucius Fox, and it would take too long to explain this because comics, but Lucius Fox now has been given control of all this billions and billions of dollars, which the Joker worked to look like Bruce Wayne's been embezzling money forever. And Lucius has a new bodyguard, Cole Cash, the grifter from Wildcats.
Okay, that's kind of awesome. Now
yeah.
I'm in.
They're talking about it. I'm hoping they're going to be bringing the Wildcats in and other Wildstorm characters again, because they tried that with the New 52 to not great effect. You had the Wildstorm, which was this separate universe that Warren Ellis was writing, and he was going to reinvent the Wildstorm universe, but then it came out that he's may or may not be this huge creep and has been grooming female fans for years.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's a little cringe. No, it's really cringe. So anyway, a lot of these events, like I said, with Batman being defunded and this new mayor like operating, the elements of that have been stretched into this future timeline where there's this setup called the Magistrate, which is essentially Nazi-esque or fascistic security force that has basically taken over in Gotham City, and the mayor barely has any control on these guys. And it goes a few years past that, Titan's Academy has been nuked in a previous storyline, and Shazam's running the team, but he might be going insane because he hasn't turned back into Billy for years. And this is something, if you've ever watched the Teen Titans animated series, they're bringing in the character of Red X, who is this alternate identity that Robin used in the series. He's going to become like an actual character in the comics. So it's kind of like what happened with Harley Quinn back in the day. And it's not perfect. I've read a few of these comics. They're not perfect, but I have that joy again of like when I started really paying attention to comics in the 90s with Avengers and Justice League and Spider-Man, that I want to see where this is going. It's like, oh, that's a really cool idea. I'm going to give this a try. So not similar to you, but not exactly like you. You've kind of taken that exit and you've steered away from superhero comics. I'm still driving down that highway, but I'm enjoying the ride a lot more now.
Mm-hmm.
And
when I look at what I want to accomplish this year as we begin to kind of close things out.
Yeah.
I want to try different things, but I also want to read stuff that I've missed. Like I said, I had a lot of fun reading Gen 13, and I'm gonna finish that before the end of the year.
Or die trying. Don't die, Mike. Seriously.
Yeah, no, I've already done that. I want to try stuff that I maybe read before but fell off of. I'd love to get back into Spawn, because I always thought that series was really interesting, and I picked up Sam and Twitch during the summer. Another book I've always wanted to kind of get into is, like I said, I want to read that Strangers in Paradise. So when my local library opens up again, maybe I'll go grab it. I also want to try some more horror comics. There's something I had a chance to read recently. It was called Miskatonic. I read the first 2 issues of that. That's really interesting. And if you're a big Lovecraft fan, there's so many references to Rats in the Walls, Reanimator, The Shadow over in Someth, the Dunwich Horror, stuff like that. Like it's interesting. And if you're a big fan of the Call of Cthulhu kind of role-playing game, you'll kind of recognize all the different pieces and parts of the Arkham Valley and where this all happens. So it's interesting. It's got me interested. Yeah. And that's something that I never thought I'd be into. And one of the things I want to do this year is I want to talk about classic storylines that I'd never finished. Like, JT, I want to go down the Clone Saga at some point, because I never read it. I only ever read bits and pieces, so I don't know what the hell happened.
Oh, God, you can't see me, but I am twitching so hard right now, because again, part of me is like, I'll go down that rabbit hole, Mike. We're going down that rabbit hole. And the other part is like, do we really want to do that? Yes, we do.
I want to read some classic stuff from the 1980s. Like I want to read some classic X-Men stuff. Like the X-Men stuff that I read was very scattered. And again, most of my X-Men knowledge comes from the late 80s to about the mid 90s. And even then it was a smattering. It was never consistent month to month. One comic series I'd love to talk about, because I read this for 10 or more issues, and I think it was called Avengers Academy or something. And it
was Avengers Academy.
Yeah. And it was like Battle Royale with Avengers, but they weren't really dead.
Oh, that was it is kind of a spin-off from Avengers Academy, but yeah, it's basically Marvel's Battle Royale with teen superheroes.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, that's interesting. I love Battle Royale. Hell, I'd love to talk Battle Royale at some point, because there was the manga, there's the novel, there's so much stuff I want to cover on this show.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully my time will allow me to do so, me in between college, the work I'm doing with the government and the website. So regardless, I'm going to find time, or as they say in Men in Black, it's a 36-hour day. You either get used to it or you go insane.
Well, yeah, and you've got to make it to the next Illuminati meeting, Mike, because seriously, your vote is so crucial.
What can I say? I will do my best, because vote does count.
All right. So, and in that light is, I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can, but Lord knows you folks know I can ramble on to no end. Before I go into what I want to accomplish, yes, we're going to do the Clone Saga. That'll be a 2-parter at least. And we might even touch the Onslaught and Heroes Reborn, because that's in and around that area. There was a list of comics that I made for Mike, folks, that he took Miskatonic, he took Bloodshot. There was Undiscovered Country, if you haven't read that yet. It's...
Oh, I didn't talk about Firepower. That was awesome.
Yeah, Firepower. You know what? Once you read the issues to whatever's most current, maybe we can even do like a 0.5 issue episode talking about that real quick. But Undiscovered Country is really cool. It's 30 years after America shut itself behind this huge armored wall and the world's going to shit. And there's like this plague ravaging the world. Gee, not involved in or influenced by current events. And this group of like scientists and diplomats go in, and you do not have an idea of what's going on. There's also Adventure Man, which is the story of this woman who's a single mother, former cop, who gets like the unknown last book of this pulp novel series she's reading to her kid. but then weird stuff starts happening and she's turning into the main character. Like she's taking on his abilities, and it's kind of weird. And last issue of the miniseries is like 3 or 4 months late at this point. So fingers crossed that it comes out. But if I were to recommend one other title to you, Mike, it would be from Boom Studios. It's a title called Once and Future, and I think I had it on the list there. I'd have to double check that. But it's this British museum curator is dragged into his grandmother's secret life. It turns out she's a monster hunter, and all the Arthurian myths that he grew up listening to the stories of from her are real, and they're trying to fuck up the world. Now, what I would like to do going forward this year, I know coming up in March, because I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and we got Godzilla vs. Kong coming out. You know, we're going to be taking a look at some of those Godzilla comics that came out, mostly the IDW stuff, because the Dark Horse stuff's really hard to find, and I only have like 4 or 5 issues of the 70s Godzilla series from Marvel. Like I said, Clone Saga. Maybe take a look at catch back up on the Power Rangers comics would be fun. It's really hard to, like, as much as I've read, it's really hard to pick what I'd like to talk about next. But I think I'm going to have to take a look at, like you said, storylines that really stuck with us, or classic stuff that I haven't read yet. Hell, maybe I should try reading something that isn't a Cape and Tights title.
Maybe I should get out of the fucking 90s.
Yeah, that would probably be for the best. But yeah, no, definitely like as soon as you said Clone Saga, I twitched in a good way, because it's one of those batshit insane things that I love. It's Spider-Man isn't Spider-Man. You get one of the best, if not the absolute best, costume redesign of the 90s in the Ben Reilly Spider-Man outfit. That was a time where I felt huge, like, and I'm still to this day a huge fan, like, where I discovered my love of John Romita Jr.'s art. Sorry. As I almost hiccup. So yeah, the future is open. We're getting the vaccine. Hopefully shit will stop setting itself on fire at random. Who knows?
So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of TWIG Sunday Funnies. As always, we do look forward to your feedback. So feedback at ThisWeekInGeek.net. If you have any suggestions for us to check out, if you kind of got an idea of what we're interested in covering, I'm more interested in the non-mainstream stuff. I love character-driven stuff. I think it's really interesting. So make sure to send us your suggestion. You can also reach us on Twitter, which is at ThisWeekInGeek. Myself or Alex will respond there. My personal Twitter is at BirdmanDodd. Same with my Instagram and my TikTok, so you can find me on there. JT, if people want to find you, where would they have to go?
Well, you can find me on the Instagram and the Twitter at JT from Saskatoon. You can also find me on sporadically, because the last couple of weeks I haven't been able to record, with my co-host Ben Carver and Red Ink for the Comic Connoisseurs podcast. As Mike talked with me off air, I did pitch the Marvel, and I think I'm just going to go with the Marvel's Merry Movie Misfits podcast. Hopefully we'll get that going. Take a look back at the MCU. Get to talk about WandaVision, because dear Lord, I haven't enjoyed something like as much as I'm enjoying that show in quite a while.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we'll be doing that. We'll try to aim to launch that show probably once WandaVision concludes, but before Falcon and Winter Soldier starts. So we'll do something on that. So anyway, for This Week in Geek, I have been Mike the Birdman, and take us home, JT.
Yeah, I'm JT from Saskatoon. We'll see you in the funny pages.
Well, that's our show. All right. Here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at TWIG_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens. What? It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.